Gardening is just a hobby for me, but honestly, it's sort of become my whole personality and a lifestyle. So I've ended up spending a pretty penny on it. So from seeds to soil, from wood to wood chips, I'm gonna break down every single thing that I've bought this year and how much it cost. The spending started back in January when I purchased over around 30 new seed packets from johnnyseeds.com. They really dangle that if you order $200 or more, we'll give you free shipping in front of you. And it's just too hard for me to pass up a deal like that. I think you'll realize that I'm very deal oriented when I purchase things for my garden. $215.44. That is how much I spent on seeds this year. Now, I will be the first to say it, that is too much money to be spending on seeds. But hopefully I'll be able to save a lot of them and reuse them next year, and I'll be able to get some seeds off of the plants that I'm growing. $274.92 is what I spent on 2 metal raised beds from teamgrow.us. Over $130 per raised bed is pretty expensive when you consider you could build something much cheaper with wood, but the metal will hopefully last me a lifetime, or at least until it rusts over. I'm not really sure if that will happen, but supposedly this will be a lifelong investment. And so if I can sort of break down that cost over years, I'm sure it will eventually be worth it. Now, the beds themselves are fantastic. I love how tall they are. I love how easy they were to assemble. It only took me about 30 minutes to 45 minutes to assemble each one. And so far, they haven't caused me any problems. So I would definitely spend that money again. But with those raised beds, I also had to purchase a lot of soil to fill them. My next 2 purchases were made at a local hardware store, $39.67 and $81.31. Pretty much all of my purchases from the hardware store are bagged peat moss that I use to fill my raised beds. I mix them with compost to make my own soil. The topsoil that I have in my yard is very clayey, and I just find that this mixture works really well for what I need to do. I amend it with fertilizer every so often, and it really works for me, but it is quite expensive buying all of the peat moss. You'll notice that a lot of these hardware store purchases I just boil down to being probably soil. There's a few things that I buy at the hardware store now and then that aren't just for the garden, but mostly it is just for the garden. So I'm kind of gonna lump that all together, and maybe this is soil, maybe this was a small gardening tool, something like that. $42.89 is what I spent on the welded wire for this arched trellis behind me. I tried finding the big cow panels, like the 16-foot panels. Pretty much everywhere I would think to find them, Harbor Freight, Tractor Supply, I couldn't find any. So I went with the next best option, I thought, which is this welded wire. I'm very happy with the sturdiness of it. We've had some pretty high winds and it hasn't been knocked over. It's just hooked up to some T-posts. My peas are hanging onto it right now. I plan to have vining plants grow up it later in the summer. And so I think that purchase was worth it. I have much more welded wire. This didn't use nearly all of it, and so I was able to reuse some for my garden fence. And any other projects down the line that require it, I'll have it on hand. The next purchase was at a local garden center, and it was $31.20. Now, I don't know exactly what I bought here. I do know I bought some soft neck garlic seeds. I don't know what else I purchased to fill in the remaining gaps, maybe some fertilizer. I'm trying to remember, but can't quite really. And I wasn't too pleased with the quality of the soft neck garlic I bought. I meant to grow hard neck garlic last fall and never got around to it, so I thought I could cheat a little bit and plant some soft neck garlic early in the spring when the temperatures were still cold. Not a lot of my garlic has grown very successfully, and a lot of the seeds that I got in the bag were mushy and kind of rotten, and so I don't think I got off to a very good start with those. Definitely gonna go with hard neck in the fall to grow over the winter this year. But I wouldn't have spent this money on the garlic if I could go back in hindsight. And then I spent another $108.23 at the hardware store. This was for peat moss yet again. Now, the hardware store has these coupons that they send me in the mail that is like $20 off at an order of $100 or 25 off $125, and that gets me every time. Every time I get one of those in the mail, I drive over to the hardware store and fill up the trunk of my car with as many bags of peat moss as I can, because filling these raised beds is expensive. And I'm going to save every penny that I can, even if I probably didn't need to be spending the money in the first place. Another $15 at the hardware store on the nose this time. I have no idea what this could be for. The bags of peat moss that I buy are like $16 to $17. They used to be $13 last year. Then I spent another $38.55 at the garden center. This was for a bunch of plant starts that I transplanted into my garden. I was getting a little restless waiting for my seedlings to grow up. I bought a 6-pack of lettuce, spinach, and broccoli. The lettuce is great. It's growing better than the iceberg lettuce I grew. I didn't plant a salad variety, and myself and my dogs have especially loved all the lettuce, and it's grown quite large, and it's pretty nice to have in the garden. So I'm happy I bought that. If I would have only spent those $6 or so on that and not bought the broccoli or spinach, that would have been fine with me because I had a ton of that growing inside, and it's pretty much at the same level as the stuff that I bought from the store, so didn't need to spend that money. And then I bought a few different flowers. I love flowers, so I'm just happy with that purchase. It's a little expensive for the flowers. It's like $6 per little pot of flowers, but I was happy to buy it. There's a purchase in there for $8.57 at the grocery store. I think this was for the seed potatoes that I have planted behind me. Yeah, they were not $8 for the seed potatoes. I'm sure I bought like a gallon of milk or something and just grabbed the seed potatoes as like, oh, I might as well while I'm here. So that's where that one factors in. There might be another charge that was actually the seed potatoes. I'm just guessing that this is the one. $156.35 for bare root fruit trees from onegreenworld.com. I'm pretty happy with this purchase. I ordered them in late March, and it took a little over a month for them to arrive. Nebraska is at the end of the list that they send to. They're based in Portland, Oregon, so I couldn't complain too much considering I purchased them very late into the spring season. So far, I'm very happy with the quality of the trees. 2 of them have already started growing foliage. The plum tree is still dormant, but I'm sure that will catch up eventually. It doesn't get as much sun as the other 2, but so far, I'm really happy. Only the test of time will truly tell how the fruit trees end up. A couple of online shopping purchases, $25.61 for mycorrhizal fungi. Now, I've received a comment recently that using this fungi to inoculate the roots of your plants when transplanting is a gardening myth, but I've seen a lot of garden YouTubers especially use it when transplanting plants that don't like to be transplanted, like squash or cucumbers or other cucurbits. So I also use them when I transplanted my bare root trees. So time will tell if that's really a necessary purchase for me again, but I experiment with things in the garden here on my channel, so you don't have to. You can learn from my mistakes. And then $26.80 on 6 25-gallon fabric grow bags. I'm growing grapes and raspberries in 4 of these, and then peppers in 2 of these. I really enjoy the quality of these bags. It's pretty cheap for 6 25-gallon containers if you think about it. Filling them up was quite expensive, but I like them a lot better than the 5-gallon buckets I was using last year, and so does my wife. She told me, I don't want to see any more of those buckets in your garden, and so I replaced them with something a little more aesthetically pleasing, which I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. $262.76. Another big purchase, and another purchase I'm very happy I made. I bought 5 cubic yards of wood chip mulch from a place in the Lincoln, Nebraska area called Outdoor Solutions. It was very high quality. It was very pulpy, which I wanted. I didn't want any artificial dyes or anything like that in the mulch because I want to build a living soil in my garden and turn it into a mini food forest. I used some of the mulch to amend flower beds in my front yard and repair some patches on the side of my house that were just overgrown with weeds, and I prettied those areas up. And if I hadn't done that, I could have filled the entire backyard garden area with mulch, but I have a small strip in the back because I ran out. I just need another cubic yard or so. I'm thinking I can just fill that in with bagged mulch. It shouldn't be too difficult to do. I had to pay a little delivery charge, but that's fine. I don't have a truck or anyone in my immediate circle who has a truck I could borrow, so the next best thing was just to pay for the delivery, which I was fine with. And yeah, I'm very pleased with the quality of the mulch that I have, and I would make that purchase again in a heartbeat. $44.36 at the big box store. This is where I bought my grapes and raspberry plants. Only one of my grape plants has started showing signs of life so far. Both of the raspberries haven't grown any leaves. I'm kind of starting to get worried. I wasn't quite sure if the quality of the plants would be great because they just came in those boxes that you see at the store, and I really wanted to try it out. I'm growing those in the fabric pots like I said earlier, so fingers crossed, but regretting that decision a little bit, and I could be growing like a zucchini plant in each one of those pots right now, so it's valuable space in my garden that's being used for something that hasn't started growing yet. $42.67 was spent on my Crocs. These shoes aren't necessarily a gardening purchase, but I bought them because I wanted just a shoe I could wear out in the garden if it was like raining or it was really muddy or dirty, just a shoe that I could mess up and not really care too much about. I had some nicer tennis shoes at the time, and so I just wanted some Crocs too. I think they're neat. I had Crocs when I was a kid, and they're making a bit of a comeback. They're pretty expensive though, more than I think I should have bought them for, but I bought the purple ones because they were the cheapest. So I was being a little frugal with my desire to own Crocs, I guess. I don't know if you could count that as a guarded purchase, but I'm going to, because the reason I bought them was to garden in them. And then $42 exactly at the hardware store. I think this is when I bought a bunch of bags of the Miracle Grow garden soil when it was on clearance. I got these for a super cheap price. And I know there's a lot of info out there about why you shouldn't use this kind of stuff, and I usually don't, but it was just such a great deal, and I needed to fill my fabric pots, and I didn't want to spend a bunch of money on peat moss again like I had been the entire spring. So I went with that, and I'm okay with it. You just have to add a little fertilizer yourself, and it'll all be fine. You don't need to be scared by all of the things that you see about this will kill your garden or whatnot. It's not going to if you take care of it. And so I will be fine, and I'm okay with the 42 bucks that it was 42 bucks. I'm okay with that. $105.67 was spent on my drip irrigation system. I bought this on an online shopping site that I will not name because they're big enough that they don't need to be named. And I'm not too happy with the quality of the purchase I got from it. They work. It really worked when I was away from home for a week and my wife was watching the garden. It was like 80, 90 degrees for that week, and she was worried about watering the garden. So I really wanted to get the drip irrigation system up and running, and apparently it saved her a bunch of headache. It watered the beds that it was in. That's a thing about the purchase. It doesn't fill my whole garden because my garden has grown since I bought it, but it really helped keep some of the cooler weather items that I'm growing in my garden, like spinach, broccoli, lettuce. It helped keep them cool when it was super hot out. And so I'm 50-50 on the purchase. Another thing, the nozzles in the connectors on the black little tubes are very tedious to put on. People say just dip it in hot water, but that barely helps. So I don't know if I would recommend the exact brand of what I bought, and I had to spend more money on little connectors, $37.50 to be exact. I think I bought 2 packs of the nozzles and a pack of the connectors because there just weren't enough in the kit to fill the entire garden space that I wanted to fill. And so I had to make an extra purchase on top of that. So I ended up spending like $140 on this drip system. That includes the hose diverter from the spout. I bought a 4-way diverter so I could, hook up my garden hose to it and have future nozzles available. I bought a backflow preventer and a pressure regulator, as well as a timer. And so those costs all added up together with the kit and the extra nozzles. Another big purchase, $309.23 at the big box store. This was all used on lumber and gate hardware. I built a fence along my garden because of the expansion project, and then I bought enough 2x12s for 4 huge raised beds that I adore. They're my favorite raised beds that I've added to the garden this year. I love the way that they look. I love how sturdy they are. They're much more I have much more confidence in them than the flimsy 1x6 beds that I built last year, or the scrap pallet beds that I'm building right now, trying to save a little money in the garden. So I'm very happy with the quality of those. And for the fence, I ended up not buying as much 2x4s as I thought I needed. I bought some posts and some 2x4s and ended up using more on the fence and ran out of wood for the gate entirely. So the next time my wife and I went to the store for something we were working on inside the house, I got her to buy me a couple more 2x4s. So she footed the bill for those. So that's all the money I spent on the wood that I purchased this year for the garden. But that's an expensive part of gardening too when you're building raised beds or structures. I wanted to build a tall trellis for my tomatoes, but I didn't want to buy a couple more 2x4s that were 12 feet tall. A, I don't have enough car space to get those home safely. And B, I didn't want to spend that much more money. So I went with the T-post Florida weave instead, and I decided to save a little bit. And then $67.57 at the hardware store. I'm pretty sure this was peat moss. And I might have bought some cotton burr compost this time. Usually I don't buy any compost, but I really just needed some in the garden right now, and I had run out of what I was using at the time. And so I bit the bullet and got some compost. Am I getting like covered with cotton right now? That's really funny. And then $51.40 at the big box store. I was looking for flowers, ended up buying a couple big things of peat moss and some new garden shears. I didn't want to leave empty-handed, and this stuff was right there, so I was like, might as well, I need it anyway. And then $181.25 on a new microphone. I am a professional videographer full-time, my day job, and so this is just valuable for me to have. I'm also like to make videos on the side, obviously, and so I use this microphone primarily in the garden, so I consider it a Nebraska garden purchase. $90.18 at the hardware store. Pretty sure this was for peat moss. Each one of those bags of peat moss is like 3 cubic feet of peat moss, I think, so it's a hefty amount every time. It's still, like I mentioned, 16 or 17 bucks, so it adds up really quickly when you only buy 4 or 5 bags. And then $73.27 at the hardware store. I think I bought my asparagus crowns, maybe some garden lime, or a bag of fertilizer in either this purchase or the previous purchase. Somewhere in the hardware store purchases, I'm gonna lump the fertilizer and all of that into, and some flower seeds as well I bought at the hardware store. I wanna make sure I'm including everything. I bought a, dogs be barking. I bought a mallet to hammer in the T-posts. That's somewhere in one of the hardware store purchases as well. And believe it or not, that was the last dollar that I spent on my garden this year. I'm making this video not to brag or show off or anything, but just to show you how much money you can spend in the garden if you're not careful. Gardening for me is the #1 thing that I've spent money on this year, other than food. Probably the only thing that I've spent a lot of money on this year. I was waiting for paychecks to go to the hardware store and buy more peat moss, it seemed like every other week. And I really want to cut down on these costs significantly for the rest of the year. I don't want to spend any more money on the garden if I can help it. Now, I fully expect to. I don't think I can get away scot-free from spending any more money, but I'm gonna try to garden as frugally as possible till the end of the year. I'm thinking if I can keep things under 3 grand, I'll be pretty happy. Now, there's a couple things I might have missed, like some nylon string or some random seed here and there that I just randomly decided to pick up. I don't know if I did that this year, but I've been known to do that in the past. So it's not an exact laundry list of every single penny that I've spent, but it's a very close approximation. I think I'm within the ballpark of like a 1 or 2% margin of error. So I'm pretty impressed with my ability to recount everything that I've purchased. It makes me feel like I didn't waste too much money, hopefully. But without further ado, let's get to the grand total that I've spent on the Nebraska garden from January 1st, 2025 till now at the end of May. The grand total is $2,466.87. Honestly, saying that number out loud, I feel like it could have been a lot more. I'm very happy it wasn't more. I'm very happy that that's all I spent. Hopefully being under 3,000 is a great goal for me this year. I would love to stay under that. You don't have to spend this much in the garden. You absolutely do not have to spend this much in the garden. And I think I have some lessons to learn about avoiding deals and not falling for e-commerce traps and really trying to be a more frugal gardener. I've been looking a lot on like online marketplaces, Craigslist, stuff like that, trying to resource free items, trying to reuse items that I have. Since I'm not growing in buckets this year, I have a ton of buckets to use in random ways this year. So let's figure out, all right, how many buckets I could use in the garden to save money. I'm thinking my sink station, instead of going out and buying more wood or a sink online, even if it's 20, 30 bucks, I could use a bucket. And so right now I'm trying to think of frugal gardening methods I can use. If you have any frugal gardening techniques, please let me know in the comments. I obviously need to hear about them and I would love to try them out. One thing I do consider priceless though is the support of everybody who subscribes to the Nebraska Garden channel. Without you, I wouldn't be out here spending this much money on the garden. So you might actually be enabling me a little bit. How dare you? But seriously, I really appreciate you. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I would really appreciate if you would. It helps me out a great deal. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. It helps the powers that be at YouTube, aka the algorithm, know that this is something that people find interesting to watch. My main goal with the channel is to help beginner gardeners figure out what's going on in the garden because it can be very overwhelming and confusing. And so I think by being as open and honest as possible, I can give people a great idea of what they're getting into. And if you made it this far into the video, I appreciate you. Happy gardening.